look at the seasons changing, we also need to look at the fact that our risks change at the same time. There's a lot of different ways that our risk can change, and so let's talk just briefly about a few of those. There's one is our physical condition, our body. How's that affected as the seasons change and as our work changes? How are our facilities affected, with the changing season? And how's our equipment affected by changing season? These are all things that we need to take a look at that can help us, control the chance that we may have an accident or, some sort of damage or loss, especially at this time of year. We'll see a spike in claims and accidents that happen right now. Sometimes that's associated with new employees coming on, seasonal employees. Those situations we're much more likely to have, injuries happening around those. Sometimes it's just the fact that, we're doing something that we haven't done for a while, or we're using some equipment that we haven't used for a while. And it's important that we take a look at each of these areas and make sure that as we go forward into this very busy time of the year, and make sure that we can do everything possible to avoid, these changes in risk that are predictable and preventable, so that we can heighten our awareness as we come into this season. So we want to talk about, these seasonal risks, what we can do right now. A lot of the stuff we're probably in the middle of, or we've already started. And, we want to obviously avoid those costly accidents that cost us time and money for you and for the trust as a whole as well. So, when we come into this changing season, it's been getting warm. We've had some nice weather. We've had some of those crazy shifts back and forth from the nice weather to cold weather again, back to nice weather again. Hopefully we're done with that, but there's probably still at least some cold nights still in our future here, especially in certain parts of the state. So we want to be aware of what can still happen, as we are dealing with water systems, equipment, and personnel. Some of the things that, are really obvious as we come into spring. The days are getting longer, and that's great. I love it when the days get longer. I love being able to get home in the evening and it's still light outside and I can get some things done. I hate the winter when I, leave the office and it's already dark when I'm leaving the office. But with that changing, length of day, there's also some changes that can be difficult as well. When that sun rises at a different time every day, at some point, during the year, I'm going to be driving to work or driving to a different job, right when that sun is coming up and it's in my eyes when I'm driving the car. That's something we need to be prepared for. Make a decision. What are we going to do? Do we pull over until this angle of the sun's changed a little bit and it's safe? Do we have something to protect our eyes? Are we looking out for that other guy on the road who also has the sun in his eyes, perhaps, maybe going the opposite direction and can't see us very well? So think about those extra hazards, especially if you're operating early in the morning. I find this particularly a problem, when I'm driving east early in the morning and I'm just happen to hit that time of day when that sun's coming up, or if I'm driving west with the sun at my back, it does present specific hazards. Make sure we take a look at your vehicle. Equipment, there's a lot of different types of equipment that we're using seasonally or daily. The vehicle, we're using it every day throughout the year, and it gets different types of wear and tear on it depending on the time of year that we're using it. Windshield wiper blades are a good thing to think about. Twice a year, in the fall and the spring, I always propose that we change wiper blades. Those wiper blades take a beating in the winter. There's, that exposure to the cold, running them back and forth on those icy windshields are rough and can affect that surface. So that can have a big impact on our ability to have a clear view through that windscreen. If we run into any rain or inclement weather, making sure we've got that washer fluid filled up and to keep that windscreen clean and clear while we're driving. Be ready to stop, if you have to respond to a hazard. If that sun's in your eyes and you pull the visor down and you can't see the road anymore, or you can only see it just barely ahead of the car, that's a good time to go to plan B, at least for a little while, just for a few minutes. That sun's going to change. It's going to move. A week from now, if it's hitting your eyes at that time of day, it won't be anymore, because that's going to continually changes every day. That sun comes up a little bit earlier and earlier this time of year. Water is a big source of problems that we have when we come into spring. You've got weather-related issues. So you've got spring rainstorms that come in. So, we're not getting the snow now, but we do get some rain that can present its own hazards, with potential hydroplaning, other activities when we're driving. But there's also the runoff, with the snow melt. We can get some really dangerous flooding that can pose serious property damage, serious hazards to the public. And so where are those areas where we have that potential risk change as the rivers and streams rise with the runoff, and take a look at the weather report, look ahead. What does our snowpack look like? What is do we have any hot days coming up where that snowpack's going to melt off faster and get us more runoff, maybe more than the stream beds are able to handle? And plan ahead for that and make sure we're prepared, if that has that potential for a problem in our area. As our pipes we're turning on those secondary water supplies for sprinkler systems and irrigation, a lot of that maybe you've already done. Maybe we're just like right in the middle of doing that right now. Make sure that we are looking real hard throughout those systems for those leaks. We get that freeze and thaw a lot this time of year in the spring. Maybe you've already turned on some water, and then we get another bout of cold weather. Maybe we turn that water supply on and there's some cracks or leaks some places that we haven't identified. Those are real common sources of liability claims where, we have a secondary water supply, some irrigation water that winds up flooding, somebody else's property, or winds up overcharging a nearby sewer system and causing backups there. So as we're turning on these water systems, make sure we get out there and do a thorough inspection throughout those systems, looking for those leaks that may have occurred from some freeze damage during the year. Sprinkler systems are going to be a common one too. When you turn that sprinkler system on the first time, you're going to find some damage somewhere. Hopefully, we try every fall to do a good job of winterizing these systems, but no matter what, there's usually going to be something that sneaks through. I know I was dealing with recharging some pipes around my yard this weekend, and I found a part of one of my systems that I had missed opening a valve to winterize part of that system, and it wound up having some water left in there that froze and broke that line. Another good thing we can do right now as we're dealing with some of this damage is to make notes about where we had potentially freeze damage that we had to address, because when we get into the fall again next year and we go to winterize our systems again, it might be a good way to be able to add into our process ways to make sure that we can avoid damage that we had this winter. Like for me, if I just find a way to make a note for myself to remember as I winterize that system in my backyard, to make sure and open that valve that I left closed last winter so that it can drain through as well. And so we have opportunity now, not just to avoid, potential problems that we're having as we're turning the water on, but also to help us remember things or change processes for the next season that will help us avoid more problems in the future. As we're getting out that equipment that we haven't used since October or September, it's really important to make sure, that equipment is ready to go. Hopefully we've used some downtime over the winter to make adjustments and maintenance and repairs to our power equipment. Lots of, this power equipment, for a lot of you, you're using every day during the summer, and so that gets a lot of wear and tear on it. Did those pieces of equipment just get put away? Are we pulling them out in the same condition where we stopped using them last year? Or, are we making sure that they're safe to use again? Let's make sure we take a look at those, make sure that repairs and adjustments have been made so that equipment is safe and ready to go now, instead of letting that wear and tear build and build, as we get into the season. It's real important to take a look at the condition of that equipment as we put it into service. Some of the really common things that we see as we go around doing inspections is where we've got, for example, safety guards or other parts of equipment that have been removed for one reason or another. Here's a picture of a mower where the discharge chute deflector has been removed, and lots of times I've had people tell me, well, we need to be able to get closer up to a tree or around a monument when we're mowing, and that deflector, that chute just gets in the way, so we took it off. This is a really serious hazard. We have seen physical injuries to people where rocks have been thrown and actually hit people in their body, in their head, in their face, from mowers where these deflectors have been removed. Sometimes even with the deflector in place, we still have these hazards and need to be careful about who's in that line of fire around the mower. We see property damage where rocks get thrown into windows or out into traffic, into vehicles. And so we really need to make sure that we stay on top of these things. If these pieces of equipment, if they've been altered or modified in a way that presents a hazard, we need to make sure we put them back. If you have to modify a piece of equipment to be able to safely do your job or to do the work you're trying to do in the best way possible, it may not be the right piece of equipment, or we may need to actually, take that extra step, and get that trimmer out to trim around those trees or monuments instead of trying to get right up on them on the mower, which may not be the right tool in that place and that time. Make sure we can use it safely. It's not, worth the damage or the injury to somebody to be able to, get that mower right where we want it always, unless we find a way to make that work properly. Know your equipment. This time of year, and Jason's going to probably talk about this a little bit more in the next hour when we do the loss prevention and talk about managing seasonal employees, but this time of year, we get a lot of employees coming in that are just coming in for the season, or they're new employees. It's their first time working for us. Are they familiar with the equipment? Have we given them proper safety induction? Do they know how to use this equipment safely? And have we gone beyond just, teaching the employee, maybe giving them a tailgate about how to use that equipment safely, but do we actually go out and do an observation and make sure that they're putting our training into their work? I think that's a real important part. Supervisors, we need to make sure we put our eyeballs on them. We do the training, and then we verify that they're using the training, that they're following the training that we've given them. People getting their hands where they don't belong is a real common injury, especially this time of year. Weed trimmers, mowers are a big one, where we have people, trying to clean out a discharge chute where that's gotten clogged up or something, and they stick their hand in there with the mower running, and they think that, well, I'm not going to stick it all the way down into the rotor, and they wind up getting injured anyway. Important safety equipment we need to make sure that it's working in place. Not just the guards and discharge chutes and things like that, but on your riding mowers, you usually have a kill switch under that seat that makes sure that if the driver or the operator gets up off the mower, it shuts down the motor. We do see a lot of serious injuries from people getting off these mowers, and they've, jimmy rigged that switch so that it doesn't work, so that they keep that mower running while they stick their hand where it doesn't belong. Make sure we're doing this safe. It's worth the extra, few seconds to make sure we do it right and keep ourselves safe. Sticking your hand in a mower that's running can cost you a lot more time than you think you're saving, by not letting that machine shut down when you're not on that deck. Power tools also, electrical tools that we're bringing out that maybe we haven't used since last year. Again, the same thing. Make sure that they're maintained and in good condition, especially if we haven't used them for a while. Take a look at those cords. Make sure the cords are in safe condition. Make sure the safety guards are in place. If you got hand grinders, disc grinders, let's take a look at those discs and stones and so forth, and make sure they're in good condition, that they're not cracked or chipped in any way that can lead to a potential failure that can be very dangerous for the operator. Again, any of your new tools that have been put up for the season that you're bringing out, let's make sure we do a thorough inspection on them, make sure they've been maintained and they're ready to use. Again, Jason will probably touch on this a little bit also, but personal protective equipment for that, for those power equipment, for taking care of the parks and yards and so forth. Make sure we have the right PPE for the equipment that we're using. Chances are, if you use a chainsaw to do any trimming, you haven't had it out since the fall or even before then. So make sure we've got the chaps, and make sure we've got the safety glasses and the hearing protection and the hard hat. Take a look at the clothing that we're wearing. During the winter, it's pretty easy to make sure we're always wearing clothing that covers us well, long pants, long sleeves, and so forth. But in the summer, as it starts to warm up, it's really tempting, to put those short sleeves and short pants on and not have real adequate protection for the equipment that we're using. So make sure we address proper clothing for the jobs being done in addition to proper PPE, and make sure employees have that training, have the PPE available, and that it's being maintained and in sanitary safe condition. Your facility is going to be impacted dramatically during the off season, and a lot of this maintenance we stay on top of year round. But sidewalks and roads are going to have damage from the cold, from snow plows, from freeze and thaw. So you're going to have cracks and potholes. The sidewalks will have had some heaving, some vertical separations, and trip hazards are going to present themselves. We need to make sure we do a good, thorough inspection of those and prioritize those repairs. You know, small cracks, small vertical separations are trip hazards, but obviously where we get really large ones, ½ inch, an inch, 2 inches or more, you know, we need to make those a top priority for getting around to correct and repair those conditions that have changed in walking surfaces over the winter. Make sure we're staying on top of those. Also, you know, your signage can be impacted. Maybe right now, this time of year, we got a lot of spring foliage coming on and growth. And so we've got branches and bushes that may be extending out, covering visibility. For traffic signs, we need to make sure we're taking a look at where we maybe need to do some trimming to keep those visible, or any other damage that may have happened to that signage over the winter that maybe hasn't been addressed yet. Also, it's a good time to take a look at the color of the sign. You know, have they faded? Is the reflectivity of the signs adequate still? You know, what signs need to be replaced, and we can make a plan for, you know, the good weather time of year to get through and replace signage that needs to be replaced. Parks and recreational facilities, it's really important we get out there right now. We're already getting into the season. You know, baseball starting, and, you know, we've got people coming into the parks. Have we checked out those recreational facilities to make sure they're in good condition and they're safe? What does the fencing look like around the ball fields? Do we have any entanglement hazards? Do we have the walking surfaces? Are they in good condition, free of trip hazards? The bleachers are a big concern. A lot of damage can happen in the off season. Maybe as we move those bleachers in and out of storage, they can get damaged. Old wooden bleachers can, you know, have deteriorated over the season and maybe need some repairs. Metal bleachers can get bent or damaged in a way that affects their structural integrity. Maybe they're missing some hardware, some screws have come out or come loose. We really need to take a look at these things before we have those bleachers full of parents and families watching the baseball games and so forth this time of year, because the last thing we need is a failure of one of these structures that get loaded pretty heavily this time of year. So make sure we do good, thorough inspections of our park and recreational facilities, especially right here at the beginning of the season, but we need to continue to do those regular inspections weekly throughout this high season for our park and recreation facilities. Remember, weather can still be erratic right now this time of year. Even if we don't see any more snow, we may still see some cold overnight conditions, especially if you're in some of the northerly or more higher elevation areas. You know, you're charging up those water systems, but we still can get some freezing temperatures coming in here. So keep an eye on those forecasts and be aware of the hazards that can change, especially, you know, in relation to the work that we're doing and any, you know, thing that we may have changed as we've charged up water systems and so forth coming into this time of year. Your physical body is going to have some challenges right now this time of year as well. Your physical activity, even if you're active during the winter, the type of physical activity that you've been doing is going to change. It's going to be different. You know, for me, every year I get out and I get my first day. A couple of weeks ago, I had my first day, you know, in the garden, and the next day I could barely walk. And it's not that I'm not active, I'm just not doing that kind of activity, you know, during the winter. And so we need to be ready. We can get sprains and strains pretty easily as our type of physical activity changes. So make sure you're aware of your physical condition. You know, engage in stretching and flexing activities that can help keep your body limber and ready to go. This time of year also, it's really easy to get dehydrated because you're not used to having to drink as much water during the winter as you do when it starts to get warmer. So make sure you stay good and hydrated. Protect yourself from the sun. You know, we should probably do some tailgate trainings you know, in your public works, in your parks departments, about making sure we protect ourselves, you know, from heat stress as we're going to be out working in the hot sun coming up here this time of year, and making sure we're prepared for that. Again, you know, physical activity is going to change. Flexibility and stretching is really important. Make sure your body's ready for the changing types of physical activities that you're going to be dealing with coming into this time of year. Every season brings those changes. So, you know, make sure that you get out there. Take a look at your equipment. Make sure your equipment's ready to go. If you've already put the equipment in use, you know, and haven't done a good thorough inspection of it to make sure it's ready for the season, let's make sure we do that today. Let's make sure things are tight, guards are in place, that the equipment is in good condition, that safety features are working, and that employees using that equipment have been trained on the proper and safe use of that equipment, along with proper PPE for that equipment and the jobs that are being done. Make sure that you're doing good, thorough inspections of your physical facilities, whether that's streets, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds. You know, playgrounds can take a beating during the winter. Those cold temperatures can make those plastic components more brittle. They'll break. You know, the park may have been in good condition in the fall, but when we come back to it in the spring, there's going to be cracks and broken parts that need to be addressed now because the use of those parks is coming on. I noticed some of the parks in my neighborhood starting to get used heavily on Saturday already, but school's going to be out here in a couple of weeks, and we need to make sure that that equipment is safe and ready for that high season. So take a look at your physical facilities. Make sure that you've done a good initial seasonal inspection and that we are prepared for weekly inspections or daily inspections even for these facilities that are getting high use during this time of year. And be aware of your physical needs, the changes in the demands of your body from the sun, from the physical work that you're doing, and make sure that you're prepared for that. You know, stay hydrated and make sure you're taking care to stay loose and limber as you're changing these levels of physical activity. Make sure that you strive within your department, within your organizations, to build that culture of safety. Make sure that people know it's all right to take a couple of extra minutes to make sure that we can do the job safely, rather than, you know, trying to save time and doing the job in an unsafe manner, which will cost us more time, lives, money, you know, in the long run, which none of us want. So, any questions out there from attendees today, Jason, on this?
I've been working them a little bit. The only question we had was specifically about some stuff on the next presentation, and we got that. But folks, go ahead and type in the chat box or the Q&A box if you've got some questions there. I think Doug's done a great job of covering this subject. We were discussing in the chat kind of the how changing from season to season. Boy, it's great. That's one of the awesome things about living in the part of the world that we do, is we have these really distinct seasons, but it brings a lot of work and effort and risk along with it. So, all right, seeing if we got any questions here. I got nothing.
All right, no jokes, huh?
No jokes. Jim's not on. Jim's not on this session, so. All right, folks. Last word, Doug?
Yeah, go out there, just be safe, and make sure that you are, you know, thinking about what has changed, and give a good, thorough inspection of all your processes and facilities right now, because a little prevention right now can go a long ways to help us all stay safer throughout the year. And there'll be really good, valuable information in the next presentation at 10 o'clock here, so make sure you tune in for that one as well.
Let's hope there's some good, valuable information.
I have absolutely no doubt, Jason.
All right, thank you very much, Doug. Good job. Thanks everybody for attending today. Remember, we're recorded this session, and we'll be placing it up on our website as soon as we got some IT support to get that done, and then you can share that with your coworkers or other people that are interested in it. Thanks so much, everybody. Be safe out there today, and get that stuff ready, and have a great weekend. I'm sorry, I'm looking at other times.
Great weekend.
I'm thinking weekend. It's Monday already. All right. Thanks, folks. Have a safe day.